Hey guys, we are continuing to surge in the race, and that means the knives are continuing to come out. So we're going to keep debunking the myths as they come up, because I think it's important to be transparent and address criticisms. That's part of what it means. If you can't handle the heat, you stay out of the kitchen. And I'm running for president of the United States, so we're going to address any of these criticisms as they come out. A couple of the favorites from the last couple of days. One is this funny, relatively old, hackneyed one that they're pulling back out, that I somehow made a lot of money off of some failed Alzheimer's drug. Wrong. Actually, you know what is true is I did develop a drug for Alzheimer's disease. And like 99.7% of drugs that have ever been tested for Alzheimer's, thousands of other drugs, mine was one of the many that also didn't work. That's just a fact of life. If you're developing medicines, some of them aren't going to work. And in the area of Alzheimer's disease, almost none of them work. Now, the mythology is somehow that I made money off this failure. That's wrong. My company, Roivant, set up a subsidiary, Axovant, that Roivant could have sold shares in, that I could have sold shares in before that failure. We didn't. In fact, many people would call that honorable. That was extremely painful to me when that drug failed. So how did I make my money then?
That is Vivek Ramaswamy, a political novice who has become a rising Republican star and could end up on the Trump ticket. And just like the former president, Ramaswamy is unapologetic in many ways and is looking to shake up America. Be it anti-wokeism, feminism, climate crisis, border issues, government reorganizations, Israel, Ukraine, China and Russia, Ramaswamy has a strong opinion on everything.
What's wrong with this woke movement? There's a lot that's wrong with it, but first and most importantly, it creates division in our country. It tells you that if you're an individual, you're just on the tectonic plate of group identity, that you have no agency over your life, whether or not you're a member of an oppressed class or an oppressor group. That's what determines what you can achieve in life and increasingly what you're even allowed to think. Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley summed it up when she said, we don't want any more black faces that don't want to be a black voice, that we don't want any more brown faces that don't want to be a brown voice. What does that say? It equates the color of your skin, your race, with the content of ideas that you're allowed to have. That is wrong. It is anti-American, and it is fracturing our country to a breaking point. Here's the other thing it does, is it creates a culture of fear that replaces our culture of free speech. Because again, if your race goes from being about your skin color to being about your ideas, then any disagreement with those ideas automatically makes you a racist. And there is no greater damnation in modern America than to be called a racist.
Trump claims the 38-year-old would make a very good vice president. But Ramaswamy's Trump-like revolutionary ideas and speeches show that he is shadowboxing.
Well, how old are you? 10-year-old, we got to take that question. And getting young people involved, I like this. Thank you for bringing her. What's your name?
Lena.
Lena, nice to meet you.
Do you have plans to stop teachers from encouraging children in school from pretending to be things that they aren't, such as the opposite gender or other species?
Thank you for asking that question. It is for your generation that we will do it. Right? This gender dysphoria craze, I'm going to say something you're not supposed to say in public. Say it. It is a mental health condition. It is a mental health disease. And why on earth are we going out of our way to create more of that suffering when supposedly it was a condition of suffering? It's wrong. And so my view is adults aren't the same as kids. And I stand on principle here. If you're a fully grown adult and you want to dress how you want, I'm not going to stop you. We live in a free country. But kids aren't the same as adults. You will not foist that ideology onto our kids. You will not change how women compete in sports. You will not change which restrooms we use. You will not change our language.
Unlike the wealthy lineage enjoyed by Trump, Ramaswamy was born to Indian immigrant parents, went on to get an Ivy League education, and became a biotech entrepreneur who dealt with failure.
It ended up becoming one of the highest profile drugs in all of pharma. I ended up leading what ended up being the largest biotech IPO at the time in 2015 on the basis of that single drug. I was on the cover of Forbes magazine. It was actually pretty controversial. The entire scientific community was debating it. In fact, they were waiting on the edge of their seats to see whether that drug was going to work. And for my part, I thought I was actually
by the age of 30, within striking distance of changing the course of medical history for the better for these millions of patients who suffered from this terrible disease. So in 2017, we finished the trial, we turned over the cards, and it turned out to be a failure. The drug didn't work. And personally, it was devastating for me. I'd done well here at St. X. I'd graduated near the top of my class at Harvard. I'd left a comfortable career as a biotech investor behind to start this company. And then here I was, failing on this scale, more gargantuan than I could have ever imagined. I was supposed to give a speech to my employees to tell them about the results. And as I was practicing in front of my apartment that morning, I ended up breaking down in tears, and I just sat on the bathroom floor for a good half hour before heading into the office. I went from being a daring young rebel to being the guy who took a big risk and failed. I was panned in the biotech press. My peers and my competitors relished it. But eventually that experience strengthened me. It even gave me a sense of freedom. It taught me that if I was free to fail on a scale that big and still survive it, then I was free to fail on an even bigger scale the next time around and still be fine in the end. And that realization encouraged me to keep taking big risks. And eventually, we did get drugs approved. Eventually, we did get drugs to patients. The one I'm most proud of is a new FDA-approved drug for prostate cancer. And that little startup I founded in 2014 ended up becoming a multi-billion-dollar company.
Ramaswamy has been a Trump supporter ever since his political campaigns began. He has called him the best president of the 21st century, and now they're vouching for each other publicly. Vivek for Trump and vice versa.
Speak that truth, we will speak it without apology. God is real. There are two genders. Fossil fuels are a requirement for human prosperity. Reverse racism is racism. An open border is not a border. Parents determine the education of their children. The nuclear family is the best known form of governance to mankind. Capitalism is the best system known to man to lift us up from poverty. There are 3 branches of government, not 4. And the U.S. Constitution is the strongest guarantor of freedom in human history. That is the truth. We stand up for the truth. We fight for the truth. That is what won us the American Revolution. That is what will win us the revolution of 2024.
While running against him, Ramaswamy is also offering a strong defense of Trump and terming his multiple indictments as political persecution.
It's another sad moment in our country's history. The 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump, has yet again been indicted by the Biden DOJ, a political party in power that is now repeatedly using police force to indict and arrest and potentially eliminate its political opponents from competition. This is a politicized prosecution. It is a political persecution through prosecution, now in a 3rd indictment just in a matter of months against the person who is still at present the lead contender in the Republican primary for U.S. president. I want to be very clear. I am running for U.S. president in that same Republican primary. It would be easier for me if Donald Trump were eliminated from competition. That's not how I want to win. This is not about politics to me. This is about first principles. We do not want to become a country where the party in power is able to use banana republic-like tactics to eliminate its political opponents. Yet I'm sad to say that's exactly where we are.
Just like Trump, Ramaswamy is going hard against the Biden administration.
Here's my view on how we win this election. Stop talking about Biden and start talking about what we actually stand for. I'm the only candidate in this race actually offering an affirmative agenda of our own. That's how we win. Here's also the dirty little secret. Biden isn't actually in charge. The people we elect to run the government are no longer the ones who actually run the government.
It is the managerial class in the deep state. We cannot reform that deep state. The only answer is we have to be prepared to shut it down. I'm the only candidate who has offered unprecedented detail on how we will shut down the FBI, the IRS, the ATF, the CDC, the U.S. Department of Education, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. That is how we revive the economy. That is how we restore the integrity of a constitutional republic. Explain that to the American people. That's how we win in a landslide.
Trump skipped the first GOP debate in Milwaukee, and in his absence, it was Ramaswamy who became the talk of the town, stealing the limelight from experienced candidates like former Vice President Mike Pence, former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, and even Trump's biggest rival, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Now, Ramaswamy is facing flack from his adversaries for his foreign policy agenda, particularly his flip-flop on aid for Israel.
Hey guys, we are continuing to surge in the race, and that means the knives are continuing to come out. So we're going to keep debunking the myths as they come up, because I think it's important to be transparent and address criticisms. That's part of what it means. If you can't handle the heat, you stay out of the kitchen. And I'm running for president of the United States, so we're going to address any of these criticisms as they come out. A couple of the favorites from the last couple of days. One is this funny, relatively old, hackneyed one that they're pulling back out, that I somehow made a lot of money off of some failed Alzheimer's drug. Wrong. Actually, you know what is true is I did develop a drug for Alzheimer's disease. And like 99.7% of drugs that have ever been tested for Alzheimer's, thousands of other drugs, mine was one of the many that also didn't work. Now, the mythology is somehow that I made money off this failure. That's wrong. My company, Roivant, set up a subsidiary, Axovant, that Roivant could have sold shares in, that I could have sold shares in before that failure. We didn't. In fact, many people would call that honorable. That was extremely painful to me when that drug failed. So how did I make my money then? Well, it turns out that I worked on a number of other medicines, 5 of which are FDA approved today. I'm proud of those accomplishments. That was part of how I had success in the world of biotech. Yes, that is how you actually create value and make money without apologizing for it. Another lie that I've sort of been humored by floating around is this position that I'm somehow anti-Israel. That's just dead false and reflects the desperation of, frankly, some other candidates who feel like their fundraising might be lagging, and so they need to figure out how to attack me as a way to raise funds. That's what they seem to be doing. The fact of the matter is, our relationship with Israel will be stronger by the end of my first term than it ever has been. Actually, I was just talking about my company. Turns out one of the founding investors in my company was actually an Israeli firm. I've been to Israel many times. I have deep respect for Israel, and I think our friendship with Israel is going to continue to a higher level when I'm the U.S. president, because I'll treat it as a friendship, not as just a transactional client relationship. What does that mean? I'm going to lead Israel diplomatically into Abraham Accords 2.0. In my capacity as U.S. president, that'll be a great diplomatic accomplishment. Get Saudi Arabia, Oman, Qatar, Indonesia into that pact. Further partner with Israel to make sure that Iran never, ever becomes a nuclear powerhouse, never becomes nuclear armed. We got to make sure of that. But I also want to learn from Israel. That's what friends do. They make each other strong. They learn from each other. That's what our friendship with Israel is going to look like. I'm going to have a good relationship with Bibi. I'll invite him to the White House in a way that Biden didn't have the courage to do.
Vivek Ramaswamy has often been described as Trump 2.0 or Trump on steroids. But even as the former president is miles ahead of the rest in the GOP polls, could a Trump-Ramaswamy administration be on the cards?